Bonjour à tous, j'espère que vous allez bien. I am Virginie from French with Virginie, and today I'm going to walk you through a few things that are good to know about the French language. Whether you're about to dive into it or you're just the kind of person who likes fun language facts to casually drop at dinner parties. Now that's interesting. Well, speaking of genders, did you know that French people give a gender to everything? And I mean everything. Your car is female, potatoes are females as well. There are two ways to say you in French. So in English, you is always you. But in French, you have to choose between tu and vous. Tu is informal, so you use it with friends, family, or in some contexts, people your age. Vous is formal, so you have to use it when addressing strangers, older people, or generally speaking, people you have to show respect to. Your boss, your teacher. Vous is also the plural you, so it means you have to use it when addressing more than one person, even if you know them well. Even if you're addressing your mom and dad, you have to say vous venez avec moi. Quick tip, when in doubt, use vous. Worst case scenario, you will sound too polite. In the same vibe, we have two ways to say oui in French. The standard and formal form is nous, but you'll hear on all the time in casual conversation. On is the equivalent of one in English, but in everyday life, it replaces nous in spoken French. For example, to say we are tired, you can say nous sommes fatigués, but it sounds quite formal. Instead, most French people would say on est fatigué. Also, there are two ways to say they. There is il, which is the masculine they, or the mixed they, but I'll explain that right after. And elle, which is feminine only. So if you're talking about your mother and sister, you use elle. And if you're talking about your brother and father, you use il. And as I said a bit earlier, il is also the mixed they. So if you're talking about your father and mother, you use il. Funny to think that if you're talking about a group of 500 people and there's only one male, it's still il. Another thing you need to know, and it's very important, everything has a gender in French. So in French, nouns are either masculine or feminine, and yes, even objects. La chaise, the chair, is feminine. Le bureau, the desk, is masculine. There's no perfect rule, but there are some patterns that help. For instance, words ending in I, A, U, O are mostly masculine, like un bateau, un poteau. Still, the best thing to do is to always learn the noun with its article. Don't learn chaise, learn la chaise. Don't learn stylo, learn le stylo. You want to know something funny? Le problème is masculine, la solution is feminine. Another thing you need to know is that the adjectives agree with the noun's gender and number. In fact, adjectives change depending on what they describe. Most of the time, you just have to add an E at the end of the word to make it feminine and an S at the end of the word to make it plural. Let's take the example of the adjective petit, which means small. Un petit chien, une petite maison, des petits chiens, des petites maisons. Of course, there are some exceptions, like for adjectives ending in EUX. So for instance, un film ennuyeux, which is masculine, une série ennuyeuse, which is feminine. The changes also apply to the past participle of verbs. For instance, let's take partir, which means to leave. Il est parti, elle est partie, ils sont partis, elles sont parties. Another thing you need to know is that just like in any other language, well, French has some unique sounds. In fact, French has some sounds that don't exist in English. Here are some of the key ones. The famous French R. So it's really not like the English R. You actually have to pronounce it at the back of your throat, kind of like a gargle. Sometimes I actually tell my students that they kind of have to do as if they were scratching their throat, like You can try saying words like rue, merci, rouge, rire. What you can do is gently touch your throat while saying those words to feel the vibrations. Another sound that clearly does not exist in English is the French U. So it's a tricky one because it has nothing to do with the English you. What you can do is say E as in see, then round your lips as if you were trying to say oo, but still keep the E sound. And it goes like E. So this U sound is very tricky at first for some people, but it's very important. You'll see it everywhere in French. Tu, lune, musique, U, U, Another tricky sound that we have in French is, well, the nasal vowels. And they are exactly what they sound like, vowels pronounced through the nose. So what does it mean exactly? Well, when you say a nasal vowel, then the air flows out both through your mouth and your nose. This gives the sound a slightly, well, nasal, but muffled sound quality a bit. And usually, if you're doing it right, you'll feel a vibration up your nose like this. So what you can do is pronounce words that are supposed to be nasal. I'll give you some examples right after. Pinch your nose and you'll feel a light vibration. For instance, enfant, sang, nom, pain, vin, un, parfum, lundi, matin. And so in words like this, you must have noticed that we do not pronounce the final consonant. For instance, pain, you do not hear the final N. It's not like pain in English. Pain. Now let's talk about the liaison, so the French liaison. So to keep French sounding smooth, we link certain words together. So it happens when normally silent consonant is pronounced because the next word starts with a vowel. For instance, vous means you. Avez is the conjugated form of avoir with the vous pronoun. Vous avez is pronounced vous avez, which means we link the final S of vous with the A of avez. Vous avez. Another example, they have, ils ont. Now, do you know something about elision, les elisions? When two vowels would normally clash, we drop the first one and we put an apostrophe instead. For instance, the friend, the, le, friend, ami. But we wouldn't say le ami. We drop the E in le and it becomes l'ami. Another example, I love, je, love, aime, but we wouldn't say je aime, j'aime. This keeps French easier to say and smoother to hear. Also, mind the false friends. Some French words look a lot like English words, but they mean something else. We're not going to cover them here, but just so you know, un préservatif does not mean a preservative. It means a condom. So careful, not everything that looks familiar is what you think. Et voilà, now you're ready to dive into French with your eyes wide open. Let me know in the comments if you knew all of this already or if you learned something. And if you're serious about learning French, make sure to subscribe because I'm sharing more tips, lessons and daily French every week. À bientôt et bon courage avec ton français!